Welcome to Politics Nation. I'm Al Sharpton. Tonight's lead, the fight over tax fairness in the country. Today, President Obama took his fight for fairness on the road, promoting his plan to extend tax cuts for middle-class Americans earning less than $250,000 a year.
I believe that we should make sure the taxes on the 98% of Americans don't go up. And then we should let the tax cuts expire for folks like me, for the top 2% of Americans. And to give me another tax break, or to give Warren Buffett another tax break, or to give Mitt Romney another tax break, that would cost about $1 trillion, and we can't afford it.
He also called out Republicans for holding the tax cuts for the middle class hostage to protect tax cuts for millionaires.
I want to hold taxes steady for 98% of Americans. Republicans say they want to do the same thing. We disagree on the other 2%. Well, what do you usually do if you agree on 98% and you disagree on 2%? Why don't you compromise to help the middle class? Go ahead and do the 98%, and we can keep arguing about the 2%. Let's agree when we can agree. Let's not hold the vast majority of Americans hostage while we debate the merits of another tax cut for the other 2%.
The American people are with the president. A new poll shows that 60% say it's very important to extend tax cuts just for families earning less than $250,000. 40% want to extend those breaks for everyone, including millionaires who don't need it. Of course, Republicans, including Mitt Romney, are desperate to keep the tax cuts for their wealthy campaign contributors. They are trying to make the case that the president extending the tax cuts for less wealthy people is actually part of some imagined war President Obama is waging against small businesses and job creators. But Republicans have defined small businesses to include companies owned by rich celebrities like Paris Hilton, Donald Trump, and Kim Kardashian. Democrats called them out for that today when they unveiled their own bill to help small businesses.
Congressional Republicans want to lavish huge across-the-board tax breaks on billionaire hedge fund managers and people like mega-rich celebrities like Donald Trump. In fact, fabulously rich so-called small business owners like Kim Kardashian and Paris Hilton could qualify for these wasteful giveaways.
In fact, just today, the Senate began debate on a key item from President Obama's to-do list for Congress, a bill giving tax breaks to small businesses. It would create nearly 1 million jobs and add $87 billion to the economy. 13 Republicans voted against even debating this bill today, and other GOP senators are getting ready to load it up with amendments designed to kill it. Folks, that's what this election is all about. Who wants fairness and who doesn't? Joining me now is Congressman John Larson, chairman of the House Democratic Caucus, and E.J. Dionne, columnist for the Washington Post and an MSNBC contributor. Congressman, let me start with you. Why won't Republicans agree to pass what they agree on, which is extending cuts for the middle class?
Well, Reverend Al, thank you for having me on. They remain, as Roosevelt said, frozen in the ice of their own indifference. They are indifferent to the working people all across this country who need this tax cut. We're debating right now on the floor of the House of Representatives their repeal of the health care bill. They will not bring forward this president's proposal on jobs, ignoring the 14 million people out of work, and yet they're busy on the floor for the 31st time this year in an effort to repeal health care instead of creating jobs, and then remain obstinate in terms of, as the president said, compromising on making sure that the middle class gets the tax cuts that they need.
No, but Congressman Larson, let me push you a little on this because they claim that they are for extending tax cuts for the middle class, where the disagreement is for those that disagree, as I do, with extending it for those that are wealthier. So why not, since we agree on extending it for the middle class, why not at least do that as we debate about whether or not we extend for the wealthier with those that do and do not agree?
Because this Republican-controlled Congress would rather see Obama fail than the entire nation succeed. They are frozen in the ice of their obstinance and indifference. They would rather see the president fail than the nation succeed on several fronts, but certainly in the area of tax cuts, certainly in the area of health care, and certainly in the area of job creation.
Now, EJ, you've been covering tax cuts and politics around taxes for a long time. Is this unusual? I mean, it seems to me to be something that could backfire on the Republicans, that they're going to hold the tax cuts for everybody hostage to protect tax cuts for millionaires.
Yeah, well, I think this turns out to be a kind of political twofer for President Clinton, because as that chart showed and as virtually all the polls have shown, the idea of cutting taxes for people earning under $250,000 but not cutting taxes on the very rich, that's very popular, partly because most people aren't rich and partly because people know that wealthy Americans have gotten wealthier while the middle class is kind of stagnated. But he's making another point here, which is that if the voters blame inaction in Washington on the system or on Washington, that goes back and hurts the president because he's the guy in charge. And he's making it very clear here. I think the key quote today was, let's agree when we can agree. Everybody says they don't want taxes to go up on the upper middle, $250,000 or below, on that category of Americans, 98% of us. Why can't Congress act? And to the extent that the Republicans are looking like they're engaged in a game that says we won't give those tax cuts unless we get the ones for the rich, I think that gives the president an opening to do that old Harry Truman do-nothing Congress kind of campaign. It worked pretty well back in 1948, and I think he's going to try to tie Mitt Romney to the Republicans in Congress the way Truman tied Tom Dewey to the Republicans in Congress in his day.
Well, but is it not so that, Congressman Larson, that in many ways Mitt Romney's already tied there? He's agreed with these policies. He's apparently campaigning on them. And I think EJ said President Clinton, but I think President Obama could get a twofer here.
Well, I think he's definitely going to get a twofer here because fundamentally, as both you and EJ have said, ultimately, with the voters and the American citizens, it's about fairness. This is intuitively obvious to most Americans that this is fair. And even to those, as Warren Buffett have said, who have done well during these times, they understand the responsibility that they have, especially in lieu of the needs of our veterans and men and women who have truly been the only ones who are really sacrificing during these times. For us to make sure that we're giving them the kind of support that they need, along with lifting people out of an economy and helping them get back to work, something that on all of those fronts, the Republicans remain obstinate in their objection and an obstruction of seeing this president succeed. They'd rather see him fail than the nation succeed.
EJ, how far and how long can the Republicans go with this? Can they push this past the election? They'd rather see taxes go up for the middle class just to try and hold the line against this president and to help their richer friends?
Well, I think their theory is they can go on forever on this because they think they can just keep labeling the Democrats as tax raisers and that people won't pay attention to the specifics of the issue. The disadvantage they have is that we're in the middle of a presidential campaign that a lot of Americans are paying a lot of attention to, and they'll be paying more attention to it as the campaign goes on. And it's hard to accuse President Obama, I'll get it right this time, and the Democrats in Congress of wanting to raise taxes when he's very specifically calling for tax cuts. And, I made that Clinton mistake. It's exactly what Clinton did running against Newt Gingrich in the Republican Congress, and it worked in 1996.
Yeah.
And I think there's a reasonable shot that it'll work again.
No, in 94, Newt Gingrich and them rallied, and in 96, President Clinton was successful. Thank you, Congressman John Carson and E.J. Dionne. Thank you both for your time tonight.
Good to be with you.
Great to be with you, Reverend Al. E.J.
Ahead, you all remember the Bermuda Triangle, where ships and planes vanished with no explanation? Well, Mitch got his own version. Wait until you hear what he's saying today. Plus, Karl Rove just happened to give a speech right next to Romney's big retreat in Utah. And for some reason, Romney's son is involved. Amazing. And Martin Luther King once said, voting is the foundation stone for political action. And nearly 5 decades after the Voting Rights Act, we're still fighting over voter suppression. I'm here in Atlanta on a voter engagement tour, honored to have Martin Luther King III join me. You're watching Politics Nation live from Atlanta on MSNBC.